over India and Bharat explodes, it is important to immerse ourselves in the historical, cultural, and mythological roots of the names India and Bharat. Is it correct to say that Bharat is the true native name of our country and India is an external imposition? Or is the reality far more complex than this simplistic formulation? To shed critical light on this vexed historical and political debate, I am delighted to be joined on India Today's news track by a well-known mythologist and author of Myth Equal to Mithya, a handbook of Hindu mythology and multiple other books, Devdutt Patnaik. Devdutt, welcome to India Today. Let me start by asking you to share your views on the idea that the name of our country should really be Bharat and not India, or at least Bharat should be used much more than India, because Bharat is the name that has Indic roots and we should not be promoting a name that was the name the outside world saw us by. That India was never really the name of this country. The name really is Bharat. India is the name the rest of the world, particularly the Greeks, started calling our country by. How do you look at the entire controversy that's playing itself out right now? Devdutt Patnaik.
Namaste Rahul, thank you for inviting me. This is an interesting question, but let me give you a mythological answer. Now, in the Middle Eastern mythologies, there is an obsession with one God, one life, one prophet, singularity. Indian mythology loves diversity, plurality. So many gods, many ideas, many saints, many ways of thinking. We have always been a land which appreciates diversity and dynamism. So there is a Middle Eastern concept of singularity and there is an Indian concept of plurality. So when somebody says we should have only one name, one idea, one thought, one language, they're really drifting towards Middle East, which is the mother of Western civilization, right? I think India should retain its identity and celebrate plurality. And therefore, our gods, we have many gods and every god has many names. So you have Shiva, it can be called Shankar, can be called Bholenath. We have Vishnu, who can be called Narayan. So I think we belong to a land which celebrates diversity. We should not follow the Middle Eastern path. This is my personal view.
Could you share with those watching your understanding of the origins and the roots of the name India?
So the question about India, the origins of the name India, and you use this word native, Indic, this is foreign, this suggestion. So the word India is derived from a Sanskrit word called Sindhu. Sindhu means a river. Very specifically, it refers to the river that passes across India for several hundred kilometers before entering Pakistan. From Sindhu comes the name Sindhadesha. Now, the Arabs cannot pronounce Sa, so they started using the word Ha. So Sapta Sindhu became Hapta Hindu. Sindha became Hind. And 2,500 years ago, we have the Persian king referring to India as Hind. The Greeks come to India, they can't say her, they say e. So Indu, Indus, Indica. So Megasthenes writes the book Indica, but he's really referring to the word Sindhu. So the origin of the word India comes from the Sanskrit word Sindhu. Sindh, Hind, Ind. Sindhu, Hindu, Indu, Indus. In fact, the word Indu means the moon and is the name of Ramchandra's grandmother. So Ram, who established Ram Rajya, his father was Dashrath, his grandfather, that is Dashrath's father was Aja, who was married to Indumati. So maybe India comes from Indu, Indumati, Indus, Sindhu. So it's a very Indian sounding name. So we have associated it with the Greeks. Some people think it's the British. Not really. That's really uneducated people say such things. But it's not even the Greeks. It's really a Sanskrit word from the Rig Veda, Sindhu, which gives us India.
That's as far as India is concerned. I was reading your piece this morning. Could you explain to our viewers your understanding of the emergence of the word Bharat, its various contexts, the context in the north, the context in the south, in the light of the suggestion that this is the true Indian and true native name of our country?
Yeah, so people have been asking me about Bharat. So the word Bharat comes from the word Bharat. And Bharat, the name first comes from the Rig Veda. You have Bharata, king of the Bharata clan, winning the battle of 10 kings in the Rig Veda. We don't know much about them. Now, Rig Veda happens only in the Kurukshetra region. Then you have the Mahabharata epic, again talking about the Bharata clan, and again it happens only in the northern part of India. Kuru Panchala region is roughly what is today Delhi, Mathura, up to Prayagraj. That's the zone. The first time the word Bharat Varsha is carved in stone, it is about 2100 years ago in Odisha, in the Hathigumpa caves. You find this name Bharat Varsha, but it's referring to only the Gangetic region west of Magad. So it doesn't refer to the whole of India. So Bharat word really is a word which refers to certain parts of North India. Bharat Varsha refers to certain parts of North India. It's, it is a name given by Brahmins. So, whenever people say Bharat, 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 Bharat Khanda, Bharat Varsha, these are really coming from Brahmin sources, Vedas, Puranas, Dharma Shastras, something like Arya Desha, the land of Aryans. So Bharata is the king of the Aryans, the victorious kings of the Aryans. So it's a very North Indian Brahmanical word that emerges. And one must remember that. There's another Bharat, of course, very famous from the Jain traditions, who is the son of Rishabhadev, the first Tirthankara. And Bharat is the first Chakravarti. And I believe that probably the word Bharat really comes from the Jain traditions, but we don't value Jain traditions. Remember, Jainism was very powerful at one time, but it was driven out of many parts of India, like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. So really the Bharata Chakravarti would have been known in South India in a very, very big way. North Indian Bharat perhaps comes from Brahmin traditions, and the South Indian Bharat perhaps comes from Jain traditions. So, we have to think about these things which we usually don't teach these things in history, right? The Jain Bharata, who is a Chakravarti from South India maybe, where, he visits his brother Bahubali statues in the South India. So we have to think about these characters also.
As people listen to both your answers, would it then be fair to conclude that Bharat, the name, has its origins entirely in India? Where you gave the story about Indumati, which is, as you write, possibly also a WhatsApp forward, not necessarily entirely historical, probable but not necessarily true. But on balance, the chances are higher that India was really an external interpretation of the name of our motherland. It had roots in India, but India is what the Greeks and the others called us. So then the question becomes, what should our country really be called? An idea which is native or a name which is external to our country?
I don't think that the word Bharat comes from India, and India comes from foreigners. That's not a conclusion. That's your conclusion. That's a political conclusion, and that comes from Chanakya Niti of divide and rule. Sam, Dam, Danda, Bhed. But India comes from the word Sindhu, which is a Vedic word. Bharat comes from Bharat, which is also found in the Vedas. Bharat also comes from Bharat, which is a Jain word. So we must be aware that the word Sindhu was called Hindu by Persians and Hindu by Greeks, but they didn't give us the word. It comes from an Indian river, a Vedic river called Sindhu. So, the Brahmins of India, the Brahmana, they have controlled the literature of our land, right? So Aryans, the word Arya comes from Brahmins, but the Jains and the Buddhists look at Aryans very differently compared to the Hindus. So we must be careful of the Brahmin use of the word Bharat, an appropriation from the Jain traditions, right? They are appropriating it from the Jain traditions, one can argue. But the word Sindhu is a Vedic word, and India comes from Sindhu. So this internal, external, it's again Brahmanical, right? It's a caste thing, right? What is internal is pure, what is external is malech, is impure, and the impure people should be kept out the way untouchables were kept out. The untouchables were kept out of our villages. So we should not celebrate this mindset. It's not healthy. This is a very Brahmin caste mindset, that internal things, अंदर की चीजें कोटियाड़ के अंदर रखो, उसके बाहर उल्लंघन, Sita crossed the Lakshman Rekha and therefore becomes impure. Outside is bad, inside is good. Not a healthy mindset, I think. We are a plural country. We allow things to come in, potatoes have come from outside and we celebrate potatoes. Horses have come from outside and we celebrate. Aryans came from outside and we call ourselves Arya Desha. So, we should just allow internal, everybody came from Africa. So we are all technically, genetically African. So I think these are, but then politicians know better than scholars. We are like, हम तो mythologists हैं, scholars हैं. Those, उनके हाथ में तलवार है. Those who have the sword are far more powerful than those with the pen, right? And the Brahmins know this too.
Devdat, changing a name isn't just about nomenclature. It's also cultural, it's political. Bombay became Mumbai, Calcutta became Kolkata, Madras became Chennai. While these changes were opposed by many at the time, they now are commonly accepted. Do you see any similarities and dissimilarities between what was done in the names of the cities and what seems to be attempted now?
Yes, changing names is something that politicians do when you're we don't give ourselves names, right? Our parents give us names, elders give us names, teachers give us names. And then when do we change our names? When we change our religion. When you change your religion, you change your name. When you become a sannyasi, you change your name. So I think that is where the mindset, changing religion, this conversion idea is what leads us to deny ourselves. The greatest countries in the world have multiple names. Germany is called Deutschland. China is not called China by the Chinese. The local people call it a very different name. Bhutan is called very differently. The Bhutanese call Bhutan Drukyul, if I'm not mistaken. All great civilization, we say Egypt, but the Arabs call it Misr. So great civilizations have different names because different people have engaged with it. I guess we don't want to be a great civilization. We want to follow the Middle Eastern path of monotheism, one idea, one thought. We hate our plurality. We see alternate ideas as polluting, which is a Brahmanical caste mindset. I guess that's the path we want to walk, and I think that's an option.
Okay, thank you very much, Devdat Patnaik, for joining us and sharing your views on the India-Bharat controversy. Appreciate your time. Thank you. I want to go across now for an alternate point of view to Sanjeev Sanyal. Sanjeev Sanyal is a well-known economist. He's also the author of many books to do with history and mythology, and has a point of view very different from the point of view of Devdat Patnaik. Sanjeev Sanyal, welcome to the news track. I want you to start by responding to the assertion that picking one name is essentially a Mid-Eastern thing to do. It's not an Indian thing to do. The Indian sensibility is one of plurality, multiplicity, diversity, and therefore it shouldn't be about prioritizing Bharat over India. We've seen multiple ministers, spokespeople. We saw Mohan Bhagwatji, the RSS Sarsang Chalak, say push India, drive India. That seems to be a cultural political agenda at this point in time. The invitation from President Draupadi Murmu says President of Bharat. The Prime Minister's cards for the ASEAN summit say Prime Minister of Bharat. The same was the case when he went for the BRICS summit. How do you see this play out? Is this an attempt really by the right to push up and reprioritize the usage of the name Bharat?
Well, I don't even understand what the debate is about. I mean, the fact is that Bharat is a well-established name for India. It's there in our constitution. So is India, by the way. The constitution starts with India, that is Bharat. So both the names have been in wide use. In Indian languages, we normally use Bharat. Happened to be that when we use English, we tended to use India, but there is nothing in there not to allow us to use Bharat as well. As I said, the constitution, the English version of the constitution starts with India, that is Bharat. So, it is, I think we should be happy enough to use the name Bharat commonly. And by the way, we are hardly the only country in the world that has multiple names. I mean, you have the United Kingdom, which is also called Great Britain. You have Netherlands and Holland. You have Japan and Nippon. So, we could also use Bharat and India interchangeably when we wish, wherever we want. So, I don't see why somehow the use of the word Bharat is somehow seen as an intrusion into the English language.
Let's get into this assertion that Bharat is the native name of our country, whereas India is a foreign imposition. The Greeks used the word India first, even though it comes from the word Sapt Sindhu, an Indian river, but India is not an original name of our country. Do you buy this? The argument that India is a foreign idea or a foreign imposition, and that the name that we should use should really be Bharat, which is our internal formulation.
So let me explain how the name India came about and how the name Bharat came about, but they actually come from the same origin. So you need to understand what the origin is. Now the name Bharat actually has two origin stories. There is an older origin story, which is a Vedic origin story, and a later one, which is a Puranic one. But the link between the names Bharat and India actually go back to the Vedic story, the original Bronze Age story. So let me tell you that story, then you will immediately understand how this works. So back in the early Bronze Age, the Vedic age, we are told in the Rig Veda that there was a tribe called the Bharatas, or also called the Trutsus, who lived in roughly what is now Haryana. And they used to call their homeland Sapta Sindhu, or the land of the 7 rivers. Now what happens is that the Bharatas are attacked from the west by a coalition of 10 tribes. And there is a great battle on the banks of the river Ravi, or then called Parushti, in which the Bharatas completely decimate the 10 tribes. Then what happens is that they turn eastward and they defeat another chieftain called Bheda on the banks of the Yamuna. So what happens is that the Bharatas, start out from this original homeland called the Sapta Sindhu in Haryana, and they spread out and create India's first empire. And their chieftain, whose name is Sudas, then conducts the first Ashwamedha Yagya and becomes a Chakravartin, whose symbol is the wheel. So we have the Mauryan wheel in our flag, but the origin of the idea of it being the symbol of power actually goes back to King Sudas of the Bharata tribe. Now, note here that there is two words. One is Bharata and there is Sapta Sindhu. The Sapta Sindhu is the name of their homeland and Bharata is the name of the tribe. Now note here next what happens. What happens is that the Bharatas, they do something quite unique. You see, typically a tribe would just impose their gods on whoever were the defeated gods. Instead, the Bharatas call all the defeated tribes and even the tribes that were surrounding them, they hadn't defeated them but were in contact with them, and they basically put together all the knowledge they have, which we now know as the compilation of the Vedas, the first 3 Vedas. And in the very last chant of the Rig Veda, there is something like a contract between all these tribes where they say that, look, we will give all the tribes and their gods a place around the sacrificial fire. So in the very last chant of the Rig Veda, all the tribes that they knew about, all their gods were given a place around the sacrificial fire. So it's sort of like a contract, and in some ways this is the idea of pluralism that triggers Indian civilization. It is an idea of assimilation as opposed to imposition. Now what happens is this idea begins to spread. So over a period of time, this idea, more and more gods have given place around the sacrificial fire, and more people begin to accept the identity of being Bharatiya. And so by the Iron Age, the whole landscape of the Indian subcontinent has come to call itself Bharatiya, and the land of the 7 rivers idea, the Sapta Sindhu, then comes to cover the whole idea. So you end up with this chant, which is very commonly used even today during when you do ritual baths and so on, which goes somewhat like this. Gange cha Yamunu chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalasmin Kuru. So what does it do? The 7 rivers, which were originally just the tributaries of the Sindhu, of the Saraswati, it didn't include, by the way, the Sindhu river. The Sapta Sindhu includes only the tributaries of the Saraswati originally. They came to take over all these rivers across India, which went all the way down to Kaveri. So now all of India becomes Sapta Sindhu. Okay, so this is the origins of the name Bharata as per the Rigvedic tradition. Now what happens is other countries also call India Sapta Sindhu. Now in the Avesta, which is the Persian texts, what happens is there is a phonetic shift. Devdutt also mentioned a phonetic shift among the Arabs. Actually, it's amongst the Persians, the ancient Avestan Persians. And the sound of Sa becomes Ha. So Saraswati becomes Harahati. By the way, the same thing happens in modern Assamese as well, as it happens to be. And so Sapta Sindhu becomes Hapta Hindu. Now I am telling you this because this confusion, because the word Sindhu is used in isolation to mean the Sindhu river or the Indus river. That's not the case. The first known use of the word Hindu comes in the context of Hapta Hindu, i.e. Sapta Sindhu, which is the name which the Western Persians called India. And by the way, there seem to have been some dispute between the Westerners and the Vedic Indians, because they tend to mention that, the Hapta Hindu region had had gone into bad times and bad things had happened there and so on. So there are obviously some sort of a conflict going on there, which we can't tell what exactly it is. Anyway, this is the origin. Hapta Hindu is the origin of the word Hindu. Now, that is correct, that this word then goes further westward and then becomes India. So you go from Sapta Sindhu to Hapta Hindu to Hindu, and then that becomes India. That part of this is absolutely correct. This random extrapolation into the word Hindu, which is an Indian word, etc., which Devdutt did, there is no historical evidence of that. That is a separate issue altogether. But this part of the story that I said, which is the link between Bharata and Sapta Sindhu, is an old one and a very well established one in the text.
How do you respond to the assertion that Bharat is a Brahmanical formulation? That the history in the way that it's written, interpreted, narrated doesn't give as much importance to other traditions from the south of India, the Jain tradition, and because it's written by the Brahmins and therefore they push the idea of Bharat. How do you respond to this?
Well, again, I'm sorry to say that Devdutt has presented some of the facts, but his interpretation is entirely garbled and some of it is actually incorrect. So he mentions the Battle of 10 Kings in Kurukshetra. That's not where it happened at all. It happened on the banks of the Parushni or the Ravi, which is now the area would be in West Punjab, in what is now Pakistani Punjab, and not in Kurukshetra. Anyway, point is, he is right that there is another tradition of where the Puranic tradition and the Jain tradition, which by the way are very close to each other, that there was a king Bharat who was a Chakravartin, who was the son or grandson of the king Rishabh. So one of those stories, and there are slight variations on it, so I'll give you one of them. So there was a king Rishabh who was a great king, and he's the same king who is supposed to be the founder, incidentally, of the Jain tradition. He had a son, by the way, called Nabhi, who was a great warrior, and he is said to have conquered the Jambu Dvipa or the subcontinent. And in fact, India has another name, by the way, called Nabhi Varsha. Anyway, his son, Bharat, would then go on to become another great conqueror, and so the name Bharat Varsha is by and large from this tradition. By the way, the Puranic tradition on Bharat Varsha and the Jain tradition agree on this, that this is not something of great debate, and turning this into some Brahmanical versus Jain thing is meaningless. Also turning it into a North Indian versus South Indian is meaningless, because by the time these Puranic stories are being written, South India is more than comfortably part of the wider Indic civilizational idea. So just so that you know, the oldest known Tamil text is the Tolpakiyam. Okay, it's a grammar. Tolpakiyam is a Tamil grammar, and in the preface of that grammar, Tolpakiyam, it is very clear that you have the very first enunciation of Tamil identity. And it will come as some surprise to those who prefer a Periyarist view of the world, that in that preface, where the first proclamation of Tamil identity is mentioned, it also mentions that this identity is firmly based on the 4 Vedas. So please go and read the Tolpakiyam, the preface to the Tolpakiyam, and in there read that when the people say, the Tamils enunciate that they are the people who live between the Venkata hills in the north and the Kumari in the south, which is basically not too different from, Kumari is Kanyakumari, and in the north you have the Venkata hills. Then those people, their identity is based on the 4 Vedas. It is very clearly written. There's no way of getting around it.
Sanjeev, respond also to this idea that just because something is external or came from outside India, it's being presented as bad. Somehow the use of the name India is now sought to be looked down upon. Just because Bharat has original roots in India, therefore it's being pushed up. The idea that this is not healthy, you can't come to the conclusion that something from outside is bad, something from within is good, that so many countries have names internationally which are names that others gave them, rather than names that they came up with themselves for themselves. And the charge that Brahmins, because they were writing the literature, are controlling the literature and controlling what they want to be carried forward for the future generations.
Look, I mean, just repeating Brahmanical several times doesn't mean that he answered your question at all. Fact of the matter is, as I said, there is a very ancient Vedic tradition which predates Puranic and Jainism, which talks about India as being part of the Bharat tribe and so on. And of course, as I mentioned, also Sapta Sindhu, which, by the way, are related very closely, because the Bharat tribe considered the Sapta Sindhu as being their homeland. And then that idea then spreads, that also we have, as I gave you the chant, that clearly shows this happens, and there are many other evidences. By the time the Puranic evidence comes, the Puranas say that south of the Himalayas and north of the oceans live a people who are the Bharatiya. So again, there are more than enough evidence, and I don't know why this should become Jains versus Brahmins or some strange garbled argument. All the Indic religions clearly understand and celebrate the fact that there is a civilization living between the southern oceans and the northern mountains that consider themselves Bharatiya and partake of this civilization. So this word Bharatiya is very much Indian. Now, as I mentioned, I accept that the word India has Indian origins, but it is not Indian. So Sindhu becomes Hindu, becomes India. So by Devdutt's own admission, that by the time the word becomes India, it is a foreign word. That doesn't mean it's a bad word. It's been used widely. I use it myself. And nowhere has, I think, the government ever said that the word India is being banished. So I don't even understand what this debate is. The constitution clearly says India, that is Bharat. They are both valid words, and we should use them.
At the time when the Constituent Assembly was debating this India-Bharat question, interestingly, it was on the 18th of September 1949. It's also on the 18th of September 2023 that the government has called this special session of Parliament, leading many to wonder whether the idea is to do away with the name India. We don't know what will happen for certain on this, the 18th of September, but at that time there were lots of leaders in the Constituent Assembly debate who made the argument that Bharatiya is the Indian name and therefore that's the name the country should have, but they wanted to show that India is the modern formulation looking out into the future rather than the past, which is why India was also put in Article 1 of the Constitution. The fact is that till the time the opposition alliance came up with the acronym India to describe what they were doing, there was really no debate over the last 9 years around the use of the name India, and therefore the opposition can say that they've got under the skin of the government, that this whole thing has a political context, much more than a historical or a cultural context. There's a political context to what's at play.
See, you're a political journalist, you can decide whatever you wish. The fact of the matter is, this issue was debated in the Constituent Assembly. The Constitution of India begins by saying India, that is Bharat. By the way, the Hindi version says Bharat Arthat India. So there is no debate about one word being somehow more important than the other. So my view is, why are we so emotional about the fact that the word government of Bharat is being used? So we will use it. As everybody agrees that it's all right to have different words for a certain country, as we, United Kingdom and Great Britain, Netherlands and Holland, Japan and Nippon, and so on. There are many countries with multiple names. We can also have one. My problem is that somehow the use of Bharat seemed to have rankled members of the old elite. Somehow they thought that when they were reading the Constitution, I think they misread it as India that was Bharat. But they should read the Constitution. It says India that is Bharat.
Okay, I'll leave it over there. It is India that is Bharat, not India that was Bharat. Most certainly, it will be interesting to see where this debate goes from here. Sanjeev Sanyal, for joining us and sharing your point of view on the India-Bharat controversy. Thank you very much. We'll slip into a break. I hope you enjoyed the 2 points of view, articulated very strongly, but from different positions in the ideological spectrum, really giving you a full sense of the India-Bharat debate. Slipping into a break, a lot more for you when we come back on the other side. Stay with us.
Storm over Udaynidhi's talent's anti-Sanatan remark comparing Hinduism with dengue and malaria.
சிலவற்றை நாம் ஒழிக்கத்தான் வேண்டும், எதிர்க்க முடியாது. கொசு, டெங்கு காய்ச்சல், மலேரியா, கொரோனா இதையெல்லாம் நம்ம எதிர்க்கக்கூடாது, ஒழித்து கட்ட வேண்டும்.
But the Tamil Nadu minister is still defiant, going further and pleading that he'll keep attacking Sanatan till it's fully eradicated.
அவர் வழிகளை தான் அம்பேத்கர் எதற்காக சண்டை பண்ணாரு, பெரியார் எதற்காக போராடினாரு, கலைஞர் எதற்காக போராடினாரு, இனமான பேராசிரியர் எதற்காக போராடினாரு, நம்முடைய தலைவர் இன்று வரை போராடி கொண்டிருக்கிறார். இந்த சனாதன கோட்பாடுகளை ஒழிக்கும் வரை திராவிட முன்னேற்ற கழகம் போராடி கொண்டேதான் இருக்கும்.
The India bloc, which was silent for days, finally started to speak on Stalin Jr.
मैं भी सनातन धर्म से हूँ, ये भी सनातन धर्म से, आप लोग भी, आप में से भी कई लोग सनातन धर्म के होंगे. मुझे लगता है हमें एक दूसरे के धर्म की इज्जत करनी चाहिए. एक दूसरे के धर्म के खिलाफ बोलना अच्छी बात नहीं है, गलत बात है. एक दूसरे के, सबको एक दूसरे के धर्म की इज्जत करनी चाहिए.
Instead of saying condemn, my humble request to everybody that we should not comment anything which may hurt the major section or the small section of the people. We have to remember unity and diversity.
But the Congress is still a divided house. While Sonia and Rahul are silent, the official stand of the party is unclear. Some of its netas are openly backing what Udaynidhi said.
The dignity of a human being, it preaches equality and it preaches about equal social and economic rights. And that's all I stand for. So it does not matter to me what anybody is saying, anybody is thinking.
The BJP is going all guns blazing against Udaynidhi, comparing his anti-Hindu tirade to Hitler's genocide of Jews. BJP workers staged protests for second straight day, questioning India's bloc's soft approach to Udaynidhi's hate speech. 262 prominent citizens shot a letter to Chief Justice of India, seeking action against Udaynidhi's hate-mongering.
Supreme Court is the right forum where Supreme Court should initiate action and should bring the culprit to the law.
Hope that Supreme Court of India, which always take a suo moto cognizance, will act and will take steps against this person, because this is very, very divisive and very, very sad thing what he is speaking.
Will Sanatan attacks redraw political battle lines in Tamil Nadu and outside? Bureau Report, India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Hello and welcome to the special broadcast on World Today, our rolling coverage of the G20 summit. I'm being joined by some very important people, experts on G20. Joining me to my right is Anandi Iyer, who is the chair of one of the G20 Empower groups. On my left is Hannah Peterson, who is a journalist with The Guardian based out of New Delhi. Andrew Leung joins us on through a virtual platform. He is a China strategist and an analyst. But before we begin, let's talk about the G20 summit. There are a lot of achievements when it comes to the success India has shown in how it wanted to display Indian unity, diversity, the preparations that we see, and a glimpse of that can be seen from what we have created over here. The Bharat Mandapam's conference room, where the leaders will be holding conversations in various sessions, is how this set over here, this room over here is really looking. Without further ado, let's begin with the conversation on G20. The challenges for India are going to be on getting consensus on the joint communique. Let's begin with Hannah. Hannah, there are a lot of concerns when it comes to consensus, and that has to do with the Russia-Ukraine war or the objections that China has raised on various fronts. Do you see a joint communique, a real outcome document, or are we looking at an outcome document with footnotes and a chairman's summary?
I think certainly you're right. It's probably one of the most kind of challenging diplomatic environments for G20 yet. I think more so than last year. I mean, there was a joint communique last year which kind of did mention the Russia-Ukraine war, but I think what we're seeing now is a lot of the language that was agreed last year is now being disputed this year. So I do think, there are a lot of question marks about whether there will be a joint communique and what that will look like. I think you're right that it's possible there will be footnotes. It might be that some of the more disputed or controversial language around Russia-Ukraine, around some of the kind of things that China have objected to.
Powered by Volkswagen. Kia Sonet, undeniably wild.
India is locked and loaded for the big G20 summit that kicks off this weekend. I'm Shiv Arur. I'm here with India Today's amazing panel of journalists and experts who are going to be fronting 100 hours of non-stop coverage of the G20 summit. We call it Namaste G20. Each one of us is going to be covering it non-stop for 100 hours, so you miss absolutely nothing in what is, by all means, by all accounts, one of the most important events ever to be hosted here in India. I'm joined now by news director Rahul Kaval, who's going to be fronting our coverage, who's going to be taking us through all of the big events that happen, the big world leaders, all of the big interviews. You've been seeing his coverage. Siddharth Zarabi heads Business Today television. Remember that it was Business Today that got the first interview by the Indian Prime Minister in the run-up to G20. That's something that we're very, very proud of. Gaurav Sawant is going to be our man on the ground. I don't know if it's going to be for 100 hours, but pretty much all the time he's going to be right there. India Today, remember, the only channel with exclusive on-site access, and we'll be going live from there. Akshita has been doing the rounds of a very new Delhi that gets set to receive everyone as they begin to arrive starting Thursday morning, and she will tell us about the security. Polomi's been plugged into all of the politics surrounding the G20, and she'll be bringing us that. Thanks very much for watching. 100 hours of non-stop coverage begins. Rahul, starting it off with you, what's this week been like? We're completely ready with our coverage. You're going to be on it from the morning as well. You've been speaking to some of the biggest minds. How big is this, Rahul?
You know, we've been involved with bringing together the India Today conclave for so many years, Shiv. And the week before the conclave is always a week riddled with uncertainty about some headline speakers who may or may not come. I think the Indian government has had a conclave-wali feeling this week because with Xi Jinping pulling out, with Vladimir Putin pulling out before that, the Mexican president not coming, what was pitched initially as the grandest show of strength ever is still a very grand show of strength, but just one notch lower than the host would have wanted. It doesn't take anything away from all those who are coming, who are still coming at the highest levels of their governments, but it does take away that little bit extra. Having Xi and Biden do bilateral in Delhi would have been spectacular had it happened. That's not going to happen. The other big concern at this moment, building into the summit, is about whether there will be a tangible outcome, because all leaders summits, all such multilaterals are judged by what came off it.
Takeaways,
So outside of the photo opportunity, it'll be interesting to see what are the tangible deliverables. And I think Dr. Jaishankar, in that interview he did this morning, makes that clear. Don't assume that things aren't happening. The negotiators are still at it. It's now a race to the finish. Let's see what comes of it.
And all of those takeaways, the outcomes will, I guarantee you, be broken on India Today first. That's our guarantee here on our coverage. Siddharth, the Prime Minister choosing to give his first pre-G20 interview to Business Today is not something I'm going to underplay. It's a big article of pride that he chose to speak first to our group, first to Business Today. Many of the things he said really setting the agenda for the large-scale things that are going to be hoped to be achieved during the discussions in this summit. Just take us through some of those things and what you're looking forward to.
Well, you know, if I were to try and summarize the Prime Minister's extensive interview in one headline, I would say India's moment is upon us as far as the G20 is concerned, and that moment the Prime Minister is trying to push for is to tell the world that there is life beyond the United States and China in terms of a new economic fulcrum. And India is positing itself in the center of what is now being referred since many years as the global south. Now, this sounds like big words, but essentially the growing part of the world with a massive amount of consumption, not for now, for the next 30 years is going to be in this part of the world, Shiv. And that's where the Prime Minister is putting India right in the center of it all.
Now, the global gaze is going to be on India. There's no doubt about it. All the big world leaders that matter are going to be here. Like Rahul said, Putin, Xi Jinping and the Mexican head of state are not going to be coming, but that doesn't mean it isn't going to be big. Gaurav, you and I have been looking very closely. You're going to be on the ground. You're going to be, just a few feet away from all of these leaders and bringing us those live reports from tomorrow onwards when they start arriving. But Xi Jinping has been a big headline here in India because there was a great deal of suspense. You've been reporting that very closely. But as we've seen and as we're going to be reporting over the next couple of days, his absence at the G20 is not necessarily bad news. There is a context to why he's not coming, and that may be a big talking point at the G20.
In fact, because he may be the talking point at the G20, could well be the reason that he's choosing to stay away. In diplomacy, there's an old saying, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. And that's exactly what China is. Now, you have the entire free world that's talking about rules-based order. And what's Xi Jinping doing? Xi Jinping or China, they are actually trying to break the rule-based order. And they're being expansionist. The world will not take that, and not anymore. So there is a pushback against China and India. So there is this big conversation. China on the decline, India on the rise. So Shiv, this is India's moment. The next 100 hours will show how prepared is India to play that big role on the world stage. China will try to play a spoiler. China would not want India to win. And despite China, we will win, or we hope to win, or we'll try to win. That's the spirit of G20, taking the developing countries along. You don't want America to talk down to anyone, or you don't want China talking down to anyone. You want everyone on that table as equals. So that's India's effort.
I suspect that our 100 hours of coverage of the G20, a large part of it is going to be talking about the leader who is not there. But that's going to be very significant because we're going to give you context for why Xi Jinping not being there is not necessarily, as some sections are projecting, bad news for India. Akshita, speaking about preparations, Gaurav spoke about it. You've been out and about in Nai Delhi. We've heard lots of complaints about roads being blocked, etc. But for an event of this scale, preparations are going to be necessary. What did you see out there? Because the pictures you've been sending us, and which Gaurav is going to be seeing firsthand, are absolutely fabulous. The preparations are amazing.
Delhi, it's world-class, essentially, Shiv. Perfect place to really host the G20, looking at how it does right now. It's stunning, yes, and it's been a mammoth exercise that I think has lasted for the last many, many months. That's led to now and culminated in this beautiful Pragati Maidan that you see right now in Delhi. Yes, it's hard. I remember last evening when I was, going around Pragati Maidan, the moment my car would stop, you would have at least 10 policemen rushing towards you, whistling away, saying, you're not allowed to stop here, keep going, because there's a lot of VVIP movement in the area. Late last night when I went, I saw a lot of people stopping and taking selfies. I was saying it's become the new India Gate because so many people were stopping, taking pictures. The Bharat Mandapam looks absolutely stunning. And I think I've been saying this to everyone. I said it to all of you. Please go there. Ensure you catch a glimpse of it. The lighting, the Natraja, all of it is just stunning. And I can't wait to see how it looked on the G20 day, because I think the day I visited, we still had about 3 days to go, and it was already so beautiful. So a lot of preparations done. I know some have said, why did we need to do this for a G20? Why don't we do it even before for Delhi? But let's hope that now that we've gotten it, it stays that way.
Oh, I mean, the number of moving parts in an event of this scale, are absolutely gigantic. So you can only imagine how many security personnel are out there, and we salute all of them. They're going to be doing a really difficult job over the next 100 hours once the world leaders start coming in. And it's a thankless job in large part because of the extensive number of things they need to look after in hotels, on the road, at the venue, and we'll be reporting on them as well. Polami, the whole idea of Vishwaguru, India's rise in the international order, has been something this government takes very seriously, loves to play up. It's an election year as well. So India on the international stage is going to be, a really big thing for everyone to look out for. The government knows that the world's eyes are on us. Biden is here, Sunak is going to be here, the rest of them are arriving as well. What's the mood in the government right now?
Well, today the Prime Minister, in fact, briefed his Council of Ministers. So you can see how seriously the government is taking this event, you know, a Council of Ministers meeting, the Prime Minister himself briefing them, giving them very specific instructions to the point that they were all made to download the G20 India app immediately on their phones in that meeting, where the Foreign Secretary told them about the app so that, you know, you have all the information handy that you need to know about the G20. The Prime Minister saying over there, please understand the courtesies and the protocols that are to be followed when you go to receive world leaders at the airport. Please research. If you've been assigned that job, then you must research about the country that you're going to receive the head of state from. So learn everything about them, their geography, their history, their food habits, everything. You should be able to make conversation with them. So he's specified that. He's also said this is not about you showcasing your VVIP culture as well. Be careful. Do not be all out there, you know, trying to be these big ministers in the Indian government when you're sort of, you know, interacting with foreign delegates. Please don't use your VVIP cars and, you know, cause inconvenience on the roads on the day when you're invited for the gala dinner on the 9th of September evening. Please use the shuttle. He's asked them to use the shuttle to reach the Bharat Mandapam. So clearly his instructions are very, very clear that I want this to be a grand success. I don't want any complaints at the end of this. And each one of you should know everything about the G20. Yesterday I met with a minister and he was asking me a lot about the G20 and he was like, let me just you know, brush up my knowledge. I know my politics, I don't know my G20, so tell me a little bit more about the global south, etc. So clearly everyone is on the edge. They want to know everything before the Prime Minister quizzes them about it.
I'd
like to know who that minister is.
Incredible, and I'm sure we'll find out who that minister is, because an event of this scale, at the end of the day, behind the scenes, it's a bit of a magical process. And on India Today, in our 100 hours of non-stop coverage, I can guarantee you we'll take you behind the scenes to show you how it's all coming together. Now, Rahul has spoken to some of the finest minds in the country and the world as far as not just the preparations for G20 is concerned, but if you've been watching our coverage, you're fully equipped to watch the G20 coverage and understand why each and every part of it is so important. Rahul, the Fareed Zakaria, Martin Wolf, Gideon Rackman, all of the other people you've spoken to, has there been a common thread that you've sensed in how the world is looking at India at the time of the G20?
You know, the standout interview for me was the one that we did at the Business Today India 100 Summit, where we had Borge Brande, the president of the World Economic Forum, saying that in 10 years from now, he sees India as a $10 trillion economy. And this is using all the insights that they have and the intellectual capital at the World Economic Forum and the new world order being defined by what he called the G3, the US, China and India. And the Prime Minister in the interview we did, which you spoke about, talks about the G20 being the catalyst for a new world order. And the WEF president sticking his neck out now, because the moment you say something like this from the platform, the World Economic Forum, everybody has their own opinion on it. If that is the direction, now some of this could be a layer of hype as well, and we still need to win the World Cup to actually claim that we won the World Cup. You can't celebrate prematurely. But the direction is very strong, which also is why someone like a Xi Jinping isn't coming. Because if this is a big Indian jamboree, and if this is Prime Minister Modi's big moment in the sun, he doesn't want India to shine at the global stage. Because as we all know, China doesn't want that there be a second power in Asia. And the fact that at this moment, with the Chinese population now in decline, their workforce aging, despite all that they're doing on robotics, on STEM engineers, China's fastest days of economic growth, from what we heard from Martin Wolf at the Financial Times, are now behind them. They'll still grow. They're a formidable economy for sure. But those days are behind. India's best days are in front. And China, in some ways, trying to trip, like if this is a neighborhood football field, they're trying to trip the only striker who they think is capable of scoring a goal against them. Get him out of the play, put him out of the park, and then we'll lord over the field. That's what China is trying to do.
Incredible. The best days are ahead, which is something that's very heartening, and the G20, Siddharth, provides that amazing platform to see what the complexion and the roadmap for that is actually going to look like, because the who's who of the international order are here. I mean, Xi Jinping and Putin are not, but their representatives are going to be. In terms of that whole economy, economy hot point, Siddharth, $5 trillion economy, India on a growth path. What kind of, visible takeaways do you think the G20 might actually serve up?
Well, quite honestly, and I'll take off from what Rahul said. Remember, this is G20. There is already a G7.
Yeah.
And the world is now talking about a G3. Beyond the alphabet soup, Shiv, for us, what is really important? And I'll give you an example around China. China has extracted minerals and wealth from Africa for its own economic development. It has put in money in projects, but they come with a lot of conditions. What is India and the Prime Minister pushing for? It's pushing for a permanent seat on the G20 table for the African Union. So there is a difference in approach that we are adopting, and that is a far more collaborative approach vis-a-vis China. China, the new hegemon on the bloc, feudalistic, communist with capitalist sort of characteristics. India is trying to ensure that other countries come along, and the export of the UPI, Shiv, and I think viewers will agree, the export of the UPI will become the new soft power that India will export. Years ago, we were known for Bollywood. We will now be known for our digital prowess.
Incredible. Rahul, you want to add to that? The UPI story, very much part of something that India is being looked at for globally?
I heard Nandan Nilekani at the B20 last Sunday. This is the Business 20 meeting that was happening in Delhi. And he said that in the next 5 years, they see 50 countries signing up for India's digital public infrastructure. And these, when I was speaking to senior officials in the Prime Minister's office, and they said, these aren't necessarily just countries in Africa and Latin America who you think are technologically deprived. Some of the countries wanting to take India's open source tech infrastructure are developed countries in Europe and elsewhere. In fact, the Prime Minister himself is keen that amongst the initial adopters be first world countries, so that's the message that goes out. It's not something that we're doing for the back of beyond, just for the global south. This is India's strongest export at the international level, and it genuinely is world class. Remember when all these bank accounts were open, there was so much fun being made that there's no money in those accounts. Now, in the manner in which India has been able to transfer through direct benefit transfers money directly into the accounts, we're appearing, sometimes ahead of even the United States. When we were in the US last, whether it is getting, when I was on campus and I had to get a COVID test done, the guy could only give me a printout. He didn't even have the facility to email it to me, let alone there being an app where you can go out and download it. So some of what we're taking for granted currently in India is really at the cutting edge of the kind of global tech stack that India has been able to make, and something that all Indians should be very proud of.
Digital architecture, payment systems, it's, may sound small right now. It's going to be the big export from this country, like Rahul said, to even developed countries. Gaurav, this is a world that's in flux. Since COVID, since the Russia-Ukraine war, which you covered, I think you're the journalist who stayed there the longest. You're going to have that perspective as well, Gaurav. You also visited Taiwan. You reported from there amidst tensions. So you have a really unique perspective, reporting and anchoring from the G20 as part of our 100-hour coverage, because you know what India's intentions are. This is a huge opportunity for India to actually reserve its place in this changing world order. How do you see both the India-China issue, the Ladakh issue, what's happening Russia-Ukraine, post-COVID, China's reputation influencing how things play out at the G20?
So, Shiv, India is moving very systematically on multiple fronts. If I could, on the UPI front, I was also covering the Prime Minister's visit to France. And in his interaction with the French President Emmanuel Macron, he actually said that when Indians come to France, when they go to the Eiffel Tower, you don't need to now, buy euros elsewhere. Use UPI to pay money and see the Eiffel Tower. So this is how UPI, he hopes, will transform or change things around. Now, when you talk about Russia and Ukraine, India has made it very clear. India wants peace, bilateral dialogue between these countries. We are happy to be facilitators should it be required. Once again, this is not the platform for Russia, Ukraine. This is about taking the global south forward. Shiv, while you talk about Vishwa Guru, India actually wants to be the Vishwa Mitra, be the friend of the world, and especially the developing
reliable friend.
The reliable friend.
There's a difference there. The fact that the German envoy said that you can't have, the G20 Sherpa said you can't have a G20 happening and not discuss Russia, Ukraine. Now, the way India sees it or would like to see this issue is very different from the way countries in Europe are seeing it, because for them it's the number one issue. But as Dr. Jaishankar said, Europe thinks that their problems are the world's problems and not vice versa. But there is friction there. And the longer term concern is about the utility of the G20. Post the financial crisis in 2008, the G20 emerged as the number one global platform for taking crucial economic decisions, where the North and the South, the developed countries and the developing countries came together. But now, with China taking the position that it has, with America and China seeming to go their separate ways, questions will be asked about whether the G20 has utility in the long run in the way that it did 10 years ago.
Which is where India plays a very crucial role, Rahul, because why should we let Germany talk down or dictate rules? Why shouldn't India be the voice of the global south and tell Germany, Russia, Ukraine,
try, Gaurav, but if there are 20 countries,
problem, but let's talk about
and
the
two of them walk away and are not interested in being part of the same party,
then they are a part of the problem and not a part of the solution.
But that raises questions about the future viability of the G20 itself, which has nothing to do with what we're trying to do. We're still trying to get everybody together. We have two people, and these are not small countries. China and Russia are big countries. If they play the role of rogue states, or if China starts obstructing, that changes the contours of the G20, because China is moving away from some of these multilateral forums quite clearly.
The war for the global south is going to be very, very interesting, and we're going to be looking out very, very carefully at body language, the outcomes, and how things really play out. The tangibles, and very importantly for an event of this scale, the intangibles, that which you don't see. And Gaurav and his team on site at Pragati Maidan are going to be bringing you that aspect of it, and I promise you that you'll miss it nowhere else. Akshita, you're fresh off one of the most gratifying events of the year, the landing of Chandrayaan 3 on the on the surface of the moon. No small feat, definitely a talking point. World leaders and space agencies across the world look at India in a may I say a new light, because this is not soft power, this is hard power.
And Aditya L1.
And for the G20 to be happening just after that, and you just came back from Sriharikota after Aditya L1 as well. Yes. How do you see that? I'm sure people are going to be talking about it.
There are posters, by the way, across Delhi which show the soft landing of Chandrayaan on the moon as well, because that is something that we take such immense pride in. And I think it's telling that India is putting so much in space. The Artemis mission, everyone's talking about it. It was the biggest takeaway, perhaps for me at least, from the Prime Minister's visit. And I think you're going to be seeing a lot of focus on also space cooperation in the Group of 20. It's a big deal, because you've got developed countries all coming on board talking about this. Takeaways from the G20, we've been seeing meetings happening for the last 1 year, and we already have a sense of what we can expect as far as what will be said in that resolution. One issue also besides space that I think that we should be talking about, Shiv, it's about climate change. And unfortunately, from what we've seen really in the talks, the dialogue so far between all of these G20 delegates and leaders, is that, look, your developed countries aren't stepping up. They're not doing enough. India has been a leader here as well, as far as climate change is concerned. We've spoken, we've walked the talk on this. So, I'm hoping that we can lead from the front, not just as being hosts, but also on the issue of climate change.
Very, very interesting. I have time for one final question. Polobi, one of the juicy headlines in the run-up to the G20 has been the use of Bharat instead of India. That's become a big talking point. Everyone is seeing it as, something that the government has decided to do ahead of the G20, a big cultural flex, political messaging. How's that working out? Are we going to see a whole lot more Bharat during G20?
Of course, we already have identity cards of Indian officials saying Bharat officials at the moment. You saw the function notes from Johannesburg, which again said Prime Minister of Bharat. The function notes from the ASEAN summit that the Prime Minister is headed to in Indonesia as we speak, again saying the Prime Minister of Bharat. So there'll be a lot of pushing of Bharat, the usage of Bharat over India, and you'll see that across Bharat Mandapam for the G20 summit as well. It's very clear how the government wants to, promote the usage of Bharat, and it is going to be. I'm guessing even S. Jaishankar will be wearing a badge which basically says Foreign Minister of Bharat or Videsh Mantri of Bharat. The ministers will also have those identity cards as well. So clearly, this is something. The politics of it will keep playing out, whether this is the agenda for the special session. But the government is very clear. I've been speaking to my sources. They're very clear. What do we need to do about the Constitution? Do we need to change anything? It's already in the Constitution. Yeah. It is in the Constitution. So if you're just promoting the usage of one over the other, aren't you proud of it? So that is the message that the government wants to send out. And yes, you'll see more usage of Bharat, probably inside Bharat Mandapam as well, that me and Gaurav will be.
I'm sure the teams of all the big world leaders who are coming for the G20 have watched India Today's coverage of the Bharat issue that we broke. They've already briefed their leaders who may have to, use the word Bharat when they come for the G20. We'll be looking out for that. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, the interesting thing is because of the current nature of the programming on some of our other rival networks, who I don't wish to name, the entire attention of Bharat, that is India, and India, that is Bharat, is on India today.
Yeah, completely.
And the reason for that is that all the big newsmakers, the envoys, the world leaders, the prime ministers, they're all speaking to India today. So there's only one place, like there is during the election, there is only one destination where you will get the most incisive coverage of India's international jamboree, and that is the India Today group.
No doubt about it. 100 hours has begun, viewer, and I reiterate my guarantee that you will miss nothing. You'll have the best voices, the fastest coverage, the most accurate analysis of the biggest event ever hosted here in India. It's Namaste G20, and we'll see you in our coverage. Thanks so much for watching.
मैं हूं सना और आज मैं आपको मिलाने वाली हूं बॉलीवुड सुपरस्टार से। लेकिन पहले देखते हैं उनकी आने वाली फिल्म की झलकियां।
ये तो शुरुआत है। गुड टू गो गर्ल्स।
रेडी जी।
हाय, मैं हूं शाहरुख खान। आपके लिए लेकर आया हूं मेरी नई फिल्म जवान, और मेरे साथ हैं आज तक AI।
थैंक यू शाहरुख। अच्छा बताइए, मुझ में और आप में कौन सी बात कॉमन है?
वैसे तो बहुत कुछ होगा, लेकिन आप बताइए ना।
चलिए मैं बता देती हूँ। शाहरुख खान और मुझ में ये बात कॉमन है कि हम दोनों हमेशा जवान रहेंगे।
बिल्कुल। वैसे एक और बात कॉमन है।
कौन सी?
आप सब ने दोनों का नाम तो सुना होगा।
थैंक यू शाहरुख। वैसे आपका चार्म देखकर तो मेरे AI दिल में भी कुछ कुछ होता है। और हाँ, I am also 100% ready for जवान with the King Khan। 7 सितंबर को आपके नजदीकी सिनेमा घरों में।
Are you ready?
It's always fun to see one of your favorite celebrities become a showstopper for these couturiers, and a lot of Bollywood made its way to the Couture Week this year in Delhi. Right from Ranbir Kapoor to Bhumi Pednekar, Ananya Pandey, Kiara Advani, Vani Kapoor, you name it, and they grace the runway. Here is all the celebrity action.
The 16th edition of India Couture Week, organized by FTCI, saw Bollywood celebrities turn showstoppers. Right from Ranbir Kapoor to Kiara Advani, one saw a plethora of celebrities spruce up the runway.
I feel like a golden girl. I feel very glamorous, but I also feel very comfortable, and I always have a great time working with Rimzim. And it's always there's lots of chaotic energy at Fashion Week, but somehow I managed to keep my calm, I think.
It's a beautiful, beautiful embroidered jacket, and they decided to go without the shirt with this really interesting tie. They have a nice little emblem on it, and I think it's elegant and cool and suave and new all at once.
It feels like it's just growing on my body, the textile, the fabric. It's so sexy. I love the way it hugs my curves. It just makes me feel strong, like I can conquer anything.
It's about imagination coming to life. Literally about imagination coming to life. And for that, I mean, just look at this. We can literally sit here and stare at it.
While the focus is never on the celebrities, but the celebration of art and craft in India, it never really hurts to see celebrities glam up the runway. Indian influencers spruced up the front rows. Bahar Dhawan to Sukhneet Wadhwa, there were plenty of them adding glamour.
So, I mean, I was like literally like, oh my God, what a moment for us. Such great designs, the intricate work, absolutely stunning collection.
In New Delhi with Riya Modi, Lifestyle Bureau, India Today.
The new world order starts here, and a rising India is leading the way. A new template for a changing world.
India in the front seat for global peace and prosperity as world leaders line up for the big event.
India Today gives you the only ringside view. The faces, the voices, the big news breaks. Unrivaled build-up to the G20 summit.
Namaste G20. Continuing coverage only on India Today TV.
Head to Instagram or any other social media platform and there will be countless reels and advice on how to get beautiful pink lips. Now, lip pigmentation is a problem that affects men and women around the world. Many of them opt for lip lightening and other treatments that are actually not foolproof. Many of them are very risky. Also, make no mistake, this indeed is an extension of colorism. Lip lightening is a manifestation of colorism.
Lip treatments are big business in the beauty industry. From lip filler to lip threading, countless brands and aestheticians have shown us how we can plump, smooth and hydrate our lips. Celebrities like Kardashians, Priyanka Chopra Jonas, Anushka Sharma have done it all. But recently, what has caught popular imagination is treating up lightening. Countless videos on social media shows skin experts helping women to remove their lip pigmentation. But what causes the difference in skin tone pigmentation? It is the melanin. Less melanin creates a lighter skin tone, whereas more melanin means a darker skin tone. When skin begins to produce more melanin than usual, it can lead to hyperpigmentation. Causes of hyperpigmentation in lips include sun exposure, tobacco smoking, pregnancy, certain medications. From peeling to laser, there are several dermatological treatments. The one under scanner is use of tyrosinase inhibitors. As aesthetic it may look, the treatments have several drawbacks drawn with it too. You can expect to experience mild to moderate redness, swelling, sensitivity like a mild sunburn, temporary darkening of the targeted pigments, moderate scabbing or crusting with limp discharge. Using lemon, aloe vera and pomegranate, honey sugar scrubs are natural products that can be used to lighten lips. Lifestyle changes like stubbing the butt and hydration will help. There are no health benefits of lightening lips. Lightening the lips with a hyperpigmentation kit or various cosmetic treatments raises concerns of colorism. And normalizing it is normalizing colorism too. Let no words be minced. It is conforming to Western beauty standards. With Simranjeet Kaur Renu, Bureau Report, India Today.
This is the G20 African Union Roundtable.
We are so thankful to Government of India for promoting the cause of the Africa.
African countries are facing a lot of challenge in terms of climate change, terrorism.
So we are expecting to follow the steps of India to become an emerging country.
News that's coming in right now. Stalin Jr. sticks to his Sanatan Dharma. Udayanidhi Stalin says BJP twisted Sanatan's statement. Udaya says never called for genocide. Legal action against me on fake news, he claims. Udayanidhi Stalin says fascist BJP government did nothing in 9 years. So Udayanidhi Stalin now, after facing a lot of criticism for the statement that he's made from certain quarters, claims that it was the BJP that twisted his statement out of context. He said that he never called for genocide. In fact, the FIR which has been lodged against him in UP's Uttar Pradesh, in UP's Rampur, I beg your pardon, has been lodged on fake news, he claims. Udayanidhi Stalin there defending himself against the attacks that he's facing and the political storm that has erupted after the statement that he made where he said eradicate Sanatan Dharma. Udayanidhi Stalin, of course, continues to stand by the statement that he made. He says, I said nothing wrong. He doesn't support anything that, in fact, promotes social injustice, he says. He says, my religion is the Constitution. Now, he, of course, continues to defend himself, given, in fact, the political storm that has erupted over his statement. He, in fact, is defiant about his remark and says it is the BJP that is to blame. He says that the BJP twisted his statement and put it out there out of context. Shilpa Nair, my colleague, is now joining me on this. Shilpa, tell us more about what Udayanidhi Stalin has said now.
Well, Paulmi, Udayanidhi Stalin, the DMK minister, has put out a detailed statement on his social media accounts on the Sanatana Dharma controversy. And in that statement, Udayanidhi Stalin says that he's ready to face all legal challenges, all the legal action that the BJP is planning to take. Several cases, of course, have been filed across the country against Udayanidhi Stalin for his remarks on Sanatana Dharma. So Udayanidhi, of course, says that he's ready to face all those cases legally, and he has requested the DMK cadres not to waste their time by burning the effigy of the Ayodhya seer Paramahans Acharya, who had of course announced a bounty of rupees 10 crore on Udayanidhi's head, and also filing cases against these people. But very importantly, Udayanidhi continues to maintain that the BJP has completely twisted his words. In fact, he says that it's indeed unfortunate that top leaders of the BJP like Prime Minister Modi and Union Home Minister Amit Shah are relying on fake news or distorted information to carry out this political attack against the DMK. And in fact, I'm just going to read out and quote what he said. What is surprising is the ministers of the union government like Amit Shah and chief ministers of states ruled by the BJP are demanding action against me based on fake news. In all fairness, I should be the one filing criminal cases and other court cases against them for spreading slander while holding respectable positions. But I'm aware that this is their mode of survival and they do not know how else to survive, so I have not decided to do that. That is something that Udayanidhi has pointed out, and he also says that the Prime Minister has brought up, or they've raked up this entire controversy because they want to divert attention from the ongoing violence in Manipur, the ethnic conflict that is raging on in the state of Manipur, and also the corruption allegations or the findings of the CAG that has recently come out. So that is of course what Udayanidhi Stalin says. Even now he stands firm on what he said on Sanatana Sanatan Dharma, talking about how, if at all there is caste oppression, caste discrimination and caste inequality in the society, DMK will be the first party to oppose that.
Right, but it seems now, Shilpa, that Udayanidhi Stalin is feeling the heat of the statement that he's made in terms of the political backlash. It might be a statement that might be received in a certain way in the state of Tamil Nadu, but with the Prime Minister himself instructing ministers and members of the Bharatiya Janata Party to go all out and attack Udayanidhi Stalin and the statement that he's made, or anyone who endorses that statement. Clearly, Udayanidhi now facing the heat of that BJP onslaught.
Well, absolutely. In fact, even though, the DMK says his statements on Sanatana Dharma wouldn't do much damage for the party in Tamil Nadu, they're also aware that, the BJP is trying to tie this to the entire India alliance. Remember, even in his tweet, Amit Malviya had attributed this to the India alliance, saying that this is what the sentiment of the India alliance partners are. They are anti-Hindu and, all of that. So that is the reason why this has caused some embarrassment for the DMK, considering the fact that several leaders from the opposition bloc had distanced themselves from the comments made by Udayanidhi, but there were also some leaders who had come out in support of what Udayanidhi said, saying that there is nothing wrong in what he said. He only meant that caste hierarchy or caste discrimination shouldn't exist in a society like ours. But because, this tweet of Amit Malviya had gone viral, that was the starting point of this entire controversy. There was a complaint that was filed in Trichy by a DMK functionary, and based on that complaint, a case has been registered against BJP IT wing chief Amit Malviya, and also a case has been registered by the Madurai police against Ayodhya seer Paramahans Acharya, who had, of course, threatened to behead Udayanidhi Stalin. So DMK at this point in time feels that in Tamil Nadu this will not cost them much of a damage, because even AIDMK, which is an alliance partner of the BJP, has not reflected similar sentiments or has not spoken in the same tone and tenor as BJP on this issue. Even they have distanced themselves on this matter. In fact, speaking to reporters a few days back, EPS, the General Secretary of AIDMK, says, I do not want to delve much into this issue, but the DMK is talking about Sanatana Dharma to divert people's attention from their misgovernance. That was the only statement that came in from the AIDMK. So, on ground here in Tamil Nadu, this issue isn't causing a lot of damage for the DMK, but considering the fact that the BJP is now trying to pull in the India Bloc alliance partners into this, that of course is causing the DMK some amount of embarrassment. Right. Some leaders have expressed their concern over what Udayanidhi has spoken, is what we're being told at this point in time.
Absolutely. Shilpa, thank you so much for bringing us that breaking piece of information and putting it into perspective for us. More news that's coming in right now. After dengue malaria attack on Sanatan Dharma, DMK compares Sanatan with AIDS and leprosy. DMK Neta A. Raja crosses the line this time. Big, unrelenting attacks on Sanatan by DMK. Massive provocation in this slugfest that erupted after Udayanidhi Stalin said, eradicate Sanatan Dharma. There was comparison of Sanatan Dharma earlier to dengue and malaria. A. Raja now of the DMK again says Udayanidhi didn't go as far. He should have said instead that Sanatan Dharma is like AIDS or leprosy. The way there is a social stigma attached to AIDS and leprosy, that is the way Sanatan Dharma should be, in fact, looked at. Narayan Tirupati is joining us over the phone line right now. D. Raja there now, I beg your pardon, A. Raja there, taking it a step further, saying that Sanatan Dharma shouldn't just be compared to malaria and dengue, it should be compared to AIDS and leprosy.
See, already told, DMK is a cancer in the society. DMK, this cancer will be eradicated very soon by BJP that follows the Sanatan Dharma. And this is the culture, tradition of the country. The DMK, which is definitely a divisive force, will say so many things to create unrest in the country. And the DMK, I think, is not willing to continue with the Congress, and that is why they are unnecessarily creating these sorts of issues. Number 3 is that Mr. A. Raja doesn't know anything, and he wants to create a nonsense atmosphere because he is to be seen. He wants a negative publicity. That is what he is saying. Anyway, we strongly condemn this, and we are asking only one question: whether the Congress accepts what the DMK says or not.
Udayanidhi Stalin, in defense of his statement, said that the BJP has twisted it out of context.
No, it was Mr. Udayanidhi Stalin who said that, and he should have apologized for what he had said. He cannot change his own mother. Mrs. Durga Stalin is going to all the temples. She believes in Sanatan Dharma. She believes in the Hindu religion. She believes in gods. And he cannot, when he can't change his own mother, how can he change, how can he eradicate Sanatan Dharma in India? It is not possible. This is for merely to appease the Muslims and Christians who vote en masse by their religious, the gurus. That is what the thing is. So they want the minority votes as a whole so that they can, they know very well that Hindus don't vote, religiously. That is the reason these people are talking. It is only for votes, power, money. That's all.
But AIDMK, for instance, Mr. Narayan Tirupati, which in fact has supported the BJP, has been in partnership with the BJP, has not come out as strongly as the Bharatiya Janata Party has in order to attack what Udayanidhi Stalin said, or even an A. Raja has said. AIDMK has simply made one statement. EPS, in fact, has made just one statement, and he has said that this is something that the DMK is doing to distract away from important issues that Tamil Nadu otherwise is facing. So he's not willing to, in fact, wade into this controversy.
See, this is the question you have to ask the AIDMK and not me. I talk on behalf of the Bharatiya Janata Party. I am the Vice President of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and I cannot be a spokesperson for other parties.
Okay, let's get a word in from the AIDMK. Mr. Tirupati, thank you so much for joining us right now. Kovai Satyan is joining us over the phone line right now. How do you view this statement from A. Raja? He's taken it a step further from what Udayanidhi Stalin said. He said Udayanidhi Stalin was in fact soft when he compared Sanatan Dharma to malaria and dengue. In fact, it should be compared to diseases that are associated with social stigma like HIV, like leprosy.
Let me answer the question you asked to BJP spokesperson, Mr. Narayan Tirupati.
Right.
Every party take a stand based on its ideology. Our ideology and BJP ideology are not the same. Our ideology is all one, God is one. 51 years since the party started, we have not taken any stand based on caste, creed and religion, nor we have done any vote bank politics based on the same. And now coming to your question, A. Raja, accused Raja, is a product of DK, Dravida Kalagam, the parent body of DMK. And this is their culture, it is there in the DNA to abuse, to mock, to insult the beliefs of the majority. And this they have been doing for the last 5 decades. And A. Raja tags the same line, so does Udayanidhi, so does M.K. Stalin, so does Karnanidhi. It is there in their blood. And everybody in Tamil Nadu understands what is their motto behind it. And they will go all out to insult.
Do you think this is going to have an impact on the ground in Tamil Nadu itself? Clearly, they're brazening it out over here as far as these insults are concerned.
So let me give you some incidents from history. While we were in power, they mocked the same lines. In the same lines, they mocked Lord Muruga. And yes, there was an uproar. We took action as per the law, books of law. And you can see M.K. Stalin posing with the sword of Lord Muruga, the arrow of Lord Muruga. So when it comes to appeasement, they'll go to any level. Now, this is an attempt to appease somebody, they'll go to any level to insult the majority beliefs. And when the majority retracts, they'll paint a picture, no, it was misconstrued. Like how Udayanidhi is writing a letter today, that his statements are misconstrued, it has taken out of context. We have to tag the line and ideology of Periyar, Anna. DMK has got nothing to do with Anna. We follow Anna's ideology, all are one, God is one. DMK doesn't believe in that. So it is not only appeasement, it's, as our leader said, it's a clear diversion tactics from the mundane issues that people are facing in Tamil Nadu and the law and order issues that each and every citizen of Tamil Nadu is facing.
Okay. Mr. Satyan, thank you so much for speaking to India Today. Let's listen in now to what A. Raja said.
ஆனால் எனக்கு என்ன விந்தையாக இருக்கிறது என்றால் உதயநிதி ஸ்டாலின் அவர்கள் மென்மையாகத்தான் சொன்னார் மலேரியா போல டெங்கு போல ஒழிக்க வேண்டும் என்று. மலேரியாவுக்கும் டெங்குக்கும் சோசியல் ஸ்டிக்மா இல்லை, அது ஒரு அருவருப்பா சமூகம் பார்க்காது. அருவருவாக பார்க்குற ஒரு சனாதனத்தை சொல்லணும்னா முறைப்படி ஒரு காலத்தில் தொழுநோய் இருந்தது, இப்போ HIV இருந்தது. எங்களை பொறுத்தவரை HIV தொழுநோயை போல HIV போல சமூக அவலம் நிறைந்த ஒரு நோயாகத்தான் நம்ம பார்க்கிறோம். ஒன்று.
Okay, so that is what A. Raja said, which has now in fact taken this controversy, which was started and ignited by Udayanidhi Stalin of the DMK to another level. Now, A. Raja there crossing all limits, comparing Sanatan Dharma to HIV and leprosy. Vinod Bansal of the VHP is joining me over the phone line right now. Vinod ji, A. राजा का कहना है कि उदयनिधि स्टालिन ने तो कुछ भी नहीं कहा. मैं आगे ले जाता हूं इस विषय को एंड आई विल से कि सनातन धर्म HIV और लेप्रेसी जैसा है.
देखिए ये भारत के लिए कलंक है. ये सारे के सारे लोग जो है ना, ये वही ए राजा हैं, आपके सुधी दर्शक अच्छी तरह जानते हैं, जिन्होंने राम सेतु को तोड़ने के लिए एड़ी चोटी का दम लगा दिया था. ये उस समय शिपिंग जहाजरानी मंत्री थे भारत सरकार में, और उन्होंने कसम खाई थी कि राम सेतु को इन किन प्रकार में अपने राजनीतिक और अपने व्यावसायिक हितों के लिए नेस्तनाबूद करूंगा. उसी सनातन को नेस्तनाबूद करने के लिए इन्होंने उस समय कसम खाई थी और ये स्वयं खत्म हो गए. और अब उसी सनातन को पहले राम सेतु को नेस्तनाबूद करने की कसम खाई थी और उसके बाद इनके सारे सत्ता और सब कुछ जाता रहा. अब ये सनातन को समाप्त करने की दिवा स्वप्न देख रहे हैं. ये वो कलंक और जहरीले सांप हैं इस देश के, जो कि लगातार इस देश की आत्मा को झकझोरना चाहते हैं, इस आत्मा को मारना चाहते हैं. लेकिन इन कुबुद्धि लोगों को नहीं पता. आज भगवान श्री कृष्ण की जन्माष्टमी है. आपके सभी सुधी दर्शकों को बधाई भी देता हूँ, शुभकामनाएं भी देता हूँ और प्रभु से कामना भी करता हूँ कि इन कुबुद्धियों को बुद्धि प्रदान करें. आज मैं माता वैष्णो देवी के दरबार में हाजिरी लगाने के लिए भी आया हुआ हूँ, सभी लोगों की शुभकामना के लिए और ऐसे कुबुद्धि लोगों को बुद्धि देने के लिए. आज विश्व हिंदू परिषद का 60वां स्थापना दिवस भी है. ऐसे अवसर पर ऐसे लोगों को मैं यही कहूंगा भगवान की सद्बुद्धि दे. ये सारे के सारे कई सारे जो जमातियां हैं, कई सारे मजहबी लोग हैं, वो सब इकट्ठे हो गए हैं. ये अच्छा है, कम से कम वो कहते हैं कि जितने भी इस विकृत मानसिकता के लोग हैं, हिंदू द्रोही मानसिकता के लोग हैं, उन सबका एक ही गठबंधन है. ये अच्छी बात है कि कम से कम सब लोग एक ही राह में एक ही टर्न एंड टेन्योर में बात कर रहे हैं. आप देखिए कि शुरुआत कहाँ से हुई. अभी जो कांग्रेस अध्यक्ष मल्लिकार्जुन खड़गे ने कहा था कि अगर ये हो गया तो देश में सनातन का राज हो जाएगा. बस उसी टैगलाइन को लेकर के इनके सारे कांग्रेस और कांग्रेस को में जन्मे जितने भी राजनीतिक दल और राजनीतिक नेता हैं, वो सारे के सारे एक ही तरफ से सनातन, हिंदुत्व, हिंदू मानव हिंदुओं, हिंदू धर्म ग्रंथ और हिंदू जो आस्था के केंद्र हैं, उन पर लगातार
तो आपका मानना है कि कांग्रेस ने इस चीज की शुरुआत की, जिस तरह से ये स्टेटमेंट्स आ रहे हैं. विनोद जी, शुक्रिया हमसे बात करने के लिए. लेट्स लिसन इन वन मोर टाइम टू व्हाट ए राजा सेड.
ஆனால் எனக்கு என்ன விந்தையாக இருக்கிறது என்றால் உதயநிதி ஸ்டாலின் அவர்கள் மென்மையாகத்தான் சொன்னார் மலேரியா போல டெங்கு போல ஒழிக்க வேண்டும் என்று. மலேரியாவுக்கும் டெங்குக்கும் சோசியல் ஸ்டிக்மா இல்லை, அது ஒரு அருவருப்பா சமூகம் பார்க்காது. அருவருவாக பார்க்குற ஒரு சனாதனத்தை சொல்லணும்னா முறைப்படி ஒரு காலத்தில் தொழுநோய் இருந்தது, இப்போ HIV இருந்தது. எங்களை பொறுத்தவரை HIV தொழுநோயை போல HIV போல சமூக அவலம் நிறைந்த ஒரு நோயாகத்தான் நம்ம பார்க்கிறோம். ஒன்று.
We're slipping into a very short break. Stay tuned. News and updates will continue on the other side of this break.
Hello and welcome to the special broadcast on World Today, our rolling coverage of the G20 summit. I'm being joined by some very important people, experts on G20. Joining me to my right is Anandi Iyer, who is the chair of one of the G20 Empower groups. On my left is Hannah Peterson, who is a journalist with The Guardian based out of New Delhi. Andrew Leung joins us on through a virtual platform. He is a China strategist and an analyst. But before we begin, let's talk about the G20 summit. There are a lot of achievements when it comes to the success India has shown in how it wanted to display Indian unity, diversity, the preparations that we see, and a glimpse of that can be seen from what we have created over here. The Bharat Mandapam's conference room, where the leaders will be holding conversations in various sessions, is how this set over here, this room over here is really looking. Without further ado, let's begin with the conversation on G20. The challenges for India are going to be on getting consensus on the joint communique. Let's begin with Hannah. Hannah, there are a lot of concerns when it comes to consensus, and that has to do with the Russia-Ukraine war or the objections that China has raised on various fronts. Do you see a joint communique, a real outcome document, or are we looking at an outcome document with footnotes and a chairman's summary?
I think certainly you're right. It's probably one of the most kind of challenging diplomatic environments for G20 yet. I think more so than last year. I mean, there was a joint communique last year which kind of did mention the Russia-Ukraine war, but I think of what we're seeing now is a lot of the language that was agreed last year is now being disputed this year. So I do think, there are a lot of question marks about whether there will be a joint communique and what that will look like. I think you're right that it's possible there will be footnotes. It might be that some of the more disputed or controversial language around Russia-Ukraine, around some of the kind of things that China have objected to might not be in the joint communique, might be in a chairman's summary, might be in a footnote. But I do think that India is pushing extremely hard for there to be a joint communique, and you've got them pushing for, particularly in terms of a kind of development agenda. So I think they're trying to push this kind of joint communique a little bit away from geopolitics, which is where a lot of the kind of disputes have arisen, and to have something which is a little bit more uncontroversial, which you could in the end get Russia and China to agree to, so that you have something to show at the end of what has been a very kind of important year for India in terms of hosting the G20 presidency.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 38 and minimum 28 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 29 and minimum 25 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 29 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 29 and minimum 20 degrees. Chennai, maximum 32 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 25 and minimum 23 degrees.
are watching India Today.
Good morning and a warm welcome to India Today. I'm Paulami Saha. These are the headlines we're tracking at the top of this hour. DMK MP A. Raja's unrelenting attack on Hinduism likens Sanatan to AIDS and leprosy, says Udayanidhi Stalin stands soft on Sanatan. Union Mantri Smriti hits out. Prime Minister Modi in Indonesia for quick work trip, meets President of Indonesia, hails Bharat ASEAN friendship, gets rousing welcome from Indian diaspora.
हमारी हिस्ट्री और ज्योग्राफी भारत और आसियान को जोड़ते हैं.
Countdown begins for mega G20 summit. Prime Minister hails India's presidency. Delhi ready to welcome US President Biden tonight. Security agencies in top gear, zero room for error. China sermonizes on Bharat debate, says Bharat-India name game not important. Bleeding from fiscal woes, but China preaches. Big suspense over Parliament special session. Angry opposition demands clarity. Union Mantri says don't politicize Parliament, says no consensus needed for special session. Bumper opening for King Khan's Jawan. Cinegoers storm cinemas for 6 a.m. show. Shah Rukh Khan's starrer Jawan makes history in advance booking. After dengue malaria attack on Sanatan Dharma, DMK now compares Sanatan with AIDS and leprosy. DMK Neta A. Raja crosses the line. Big unrelenting attack on Sanatan by DMK. Massive provocation in Sanatan slugfest. So after Udayanidhi Stalin made that statement where he said eradicate Sanatan Dharma, he remained defiant about it. Now A. Raja has taken it a notch further, said Udayanidhi in fact was soft on Sanatan Dharma, comparing it to dengue malaria. In fact, Sanatan should be compared to AIDS and leprosy. Listen in to what A. Raja said.
ஆனால் எனக்கு என்ன விந்தையாக இருக்கிறது என்றால் உதயநிதி ஸ்டாலின் அவர்கள் மென்மையாகத்தான் சொன்னார், மலேரியா போல டெங்கு போல ஒழிக்க வேண்டும் என்று. மலேரியாவுக்கும் டெங்குக்கும் சோசியல் ஸ்டிக்மா இல்லை, அது ஒரு அருவருப்பா சமூகம் பார்க்காது. அருவருவாக பார்க்குற ஒரு சனாதனத்தை சொல்லணும்னா முறைப்படி ஒரு காலத்தில் தொழுநோய் இருந்தது, இப்போ HIV இருந்தது. எங்களை பொறுத்தவரை HIV தொழுநோயை போல HIV போல சமூக அவலம் நிறைந்த ஒரு நோயாகத்தான் நம்ம பார்க்கிறோம். ஒன்று.
In fact, what A. Raja said, which has now sparked another round of controversy. First, Udayanidhi Stalin, who seemed to be now explaining and justifying himself, especially after the case that was lodged against him in UP's Rampur, and then, of course, the Prime Minister's word to all BJP netas that they should go all out and aggressively counter the statement that Udayanidhi Stalin said. Udayanidhi there explaining himself, saying he was misunderstood and misrepresented by the Bharatiya Janata Party. Pramod Madhav is now joining me live on this. Pramod, this is going to stoke up another row of controversy because this seems to be unrelenting. Udayanidhi Stalin already had stoked a controversy. Now A. Raja simply adds fuel to fire, insulting Sanatan Dharma.
Well, A. Raja is already known for such speeches, and he's been constantly opposing Sanatana Dharma in various forms as well. So currently what he has said is that he claims that when Udayanidhi said and compared Sanatan Dharma to malaria and dengue, he was actually taking a softer stance, and that Sanatan Dharma is unlike malaria and dengue, does not have the diseases malaria and dengue do not have a social stigma, and a better kind of comparison should be offered to be with diseases such as HIV and leprosy, which have social stigma. This is how H. Raja is explaining it, and not just that, he's also challenging. He claims that the Prime Minister calls himself as a Vishwaguru along with Amit Shah, but him being from a person from Tamil Nadu, he's ready to come to Delhi, and even after being surrounded by 10 lakh to a crore people carrying weapons, whatever it may be, he is ready to debate, carrying the books of Ambedkar and Periyar. This is what A. Raja said, and this way he is also extending his massive support to Udayanidhi Stalin, who also has released a statement recently claiming that whatever he said has only been twisted.
While Udayanidhi Stalin there is trying to explain himself and say that it has been twisted out of context, somewhere adopting a bit of a softer stance in as many days for the first time, A. Raja there taking it a notch further. Clearly the DMK is supporting the statement which is being made against Sanatan Dharma.
It absolutely is. Various leaders of the party have definitely extended their support towards Udayanidhi Stalin because he's the next face of the party. And the second aspect is that A. Raja and various other leaders have constantly been opposing Sanatan Dharma, not just now, for very long period. And they claim that these are the essence of the teachings of
Pramod,
Periyar
just hold on for a moment over there. Alicia Abdullah of the BJP is joining us over the phone line right now. What do you think and make of this statement? Udayanidhi Stalin had only compared Sanatan Dharma with malaria and dengue. A. Raja says that was soft. Let me take it a notch further and say Sanatan Dharma should be compared with diseases that are associated with social stigma like AIDS and leprosy.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi.